Alrighty guys, check this out. New engine stand. It's supposed to be a 1,500 pound stand, but I'm going to be doing a transmission. My other stand is being used right now by a spare engine, so that's why I got this stand. Alright, so this is a transmission I did about 3 years ago for someone. And he's actually been on the channel a couple times. He has a gray New Edge Mustang, and he's been low 9s with this transmission in that car now. Shooting for 8s this year, and basically just wants me to go through it and double check everything. There's no issues with it that we know of. He did have a little bit of tight fitment on the converter spacing, and thinks he might have wiped the thrust on the motor, so we would just want to check the transmission, make sure everything's good, make sure the pump's good, and get it ready for this year. This does have a Jake's D3 trans brake in it. A little pressure switch wire off of there. He also did bring me some new AC Delco solenoids for the trans brake solenoids. He hasn't been having issues with them, but wanted to maybe swap them out because I did have issues with mine at one point. So look at what solenoids are in there and maybe swap those out. And it looks like that might be those TransStar solenoids or some off-brand solenoid. So maybe we'll swap those out. And I like to use a magnet to pull out the check balls. And the Jake's kit only has 4 check balls in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 of them. And you can stick the magnet to the side of the pan. Center support bolt here is a 3/8 12 point, and just want to make sure that if your socket is too wide, it can actually create little burrs around there and it can cut the gasket. So if you really have to press that thing in there, you want to file that little lip down if it makes one. So I'll take off the lockup O-ring. That's this green O-ring on the input shaft. Otherwise the pump won't slide off. And those bolts I usually set to the side outside of the pan. Everything else I put inside the pan, but those are outside the transmission, so I put them outside the pan. That was pretty easy. Well, one of his main concerns was going to be the pump, just to check the pump and make sure that if there was extra pressure on the crank, that there wasn't anything wrecking the pump. So we'll check that. So that all looks pretty good. No weird gouges or scratches or anything. Lightly tighten those until I can get my alignment tool on there. Get the forward drum out. Check those clutches right away. Don't see any wear or anything goofy. Those are all the forwards. Everything looks good there. Pull the direct drum out. These look a little spotty. Got some hot spots on the steels. They're the intermediates. These usually have some spots on them. That's actually not too bad, I don't think, for the intermediates, but intermediates usually look worse. I'm surprised that the direct looks as bad as the intermediates. Here's another look at the directs. So this has been in the car, like I said, for 3 years. Not daily driven, but track driven usually, and trans brake stuff. So I'll measure the thickness of the clutches and see how much wear is on them. Alright, so we're starting to get some parts back in for this thing, so I'm going to start working on the assembly. So everything else looked pretty good. There wasn't any issues that I could see with any hard parts or bushings or anything else. So go ahead and clamp this on so I can drop this in the case. Alright, so what we're going to do with this thing is we're going to do new intermediate clutches and steels. These are the intermediate steels. And then I got a set of BorgWarner clutches. Also got this Bowler Performance Billet Direct for 6 clutches. So this has 6 clutches and steels. These are XD clutches. I'm going to replace those with the BorgWarner clutches. And we'll put this thing in there. I've never used this before, but talked it over with the owner and figured we'd try this thing. So this is pretty cool. All billet direct piston. Comes with the inner and outer lip seals. So, kind of a nice piece. So I'm soaking the clutches now, but this Bowler piston kit does come with the clutches and the steels. You could probably, I'm sure the XD clutches are probably fine, but we're just gonna put the BorgWarner clutches in because we feel like it. But this kit was $175. I didn't think it was too bad because it has the piston. It does come with the lip seals. Should be already set up for the 6 clutches. Comes with clutches and the steels. And if you were to buy all that stuff individually, you'd probably be almost pretty close in price if you bought steels, like just the steel kit, just the clutches, just the lip seals, and then doing the work of turning the piston down on the lathe. I think the last one that I bought for mine, the last piston that I bought for mine was like $70, $80, somewhere in that range, and that was already machined for the depth of the 6 clutches. You can get just like the stock depth T400 aluminum pistons, but then you gotta turn them down on a lathe. If you don't have a lathe, you're probably paying someone to do it. So I feel like for $175, this isn't too bad of a price for that. Using this snap ring pliers, I bought this just for doing these snap rings. Pretty easy. Alright, so I got the piston installed. Went in a little bit tougher than a stock piston. I think the clearances are pretty tight on it. But it does spin in there. Nice. So, alright, so I'm going to put this thing together quick just to check the clearances. I did soak the clutches. Alright, so I got an 18, 19, and a 20, so 57 thousandths. And I am able to get that in there. Slide it around. So 57 thousandths, that's about 10 thousandths per clutch. And I measured that by taking the top clutch and steel and flipping them upside down so I can stick the feeler gauges between the steel and the top plate so I don't scratch the clutch. So I'll go ahead and just put that back in the right way with the steel, then the clutch, then the plate. Well, I'll probably put the spring pack in first. I'll do that first, then we'll put everything else in. Alright, so we'll do the intermediate section now. Do have the stock wave in there. This is just going to be a stock. I did put the beveled snap ring on top of the center support there. And I'm going to do a steel on top of the wave, then a clutch, then just alternate from here. I know this isn't like a complete rebuild video showing all the steps, but I have a bunch of those on here. I'm sure if you guys have been watching for a while, you know that, and you're probably getting sick of me doing 4L80 videos, but hey, it kills the time, right? So we got that on. We'll put the pressure plate on. intermediate snap ring. This is a HD heavy duty thick snap ring. Just make sure we're not bound up. Go ahead and put the front band on, then we can put the direct drum in. Not too bad. I just want to wait till we hear the clunk. Metal clunk. One went in pretty easy. Fourth drum. There we go. Alright, got the gasket on here. I'll throw the pump on. I did use the pump alignment tool on the two halves. I'll put a little RTV on the back side of the bolts. I did start doing that on every one now that I had a leak. Instead of replacing all these gaskets, if I'm reusing the bolts, let's throw some RTV on the back side. They usually don't leak, but I did have one of mine leak, so just do that every time now. As for the rest of this thing, pretty basic stuff. Just gonna bolt the valve body back on. I'll throw the lockup O-ring back on quick so we don't forget about that. Valve body, I'm just gonna take it apart and clean it. It does have some clutch material on it, and I'm still waiting on the valve body gaskets. So I'm not gonna finish that in this video. I ordered some valve body gaskets and they got delayed like a week, so another thing I'm gonna do is swap out the solenoids that are on it to the AC Delco solenoids. So this transmission wasn't having an issue, but my transmission did have an issue with locking up when I was cruising. So not with lockup, but the transmission was actually locking up. So I don't know if you can see on this one here, you can see through the light. There's a little ball inside there. You can see light all the way through that. And then on this one, you can't see any light through it. So that exhaust passage for the fluid is different on these. And on the AC Delco one, it's a lot bigger exhaust passage. So when this is in there and it's trying to pass fluid through it, if there's any dirt or anything in there, it can plug up a little bit easier. And that ended up being what my issue was on the trans brake that's in the Ranger here. So I had issues with that one. Two different vehicles. I did a whole video on that, but swapped out the solenoids and it ended up being good. So just in case, he brought me some solenoids and we're going to put those in there. I did start working on the rear end here for the Volvo. Used a big tubing cutter here that I borrowed from a friend and chopped out my section. I just have to bevel this so I can weld it, clamp it on, and get that going. I do have the other axle for it. So shouldn't be too long on that, but I am working on a video for this at the same time. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.